Good everyone, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to be taking you through a full D5 render course on rendering a high-rise building. So if this is your first time in the channel, just make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to this channel for more content like this, also hit the notification bell to get notified when we release new videos like this. Without wasting any more time, let's jump right into the video. Alright, firstly, we are going to start from our Revit project, as you can see. So we are going to start exporting them. To export, we are going to go over to this D5 render tab over here. To get this D5 render tab on your system, you need to install the D5 Revit plugin. So you can get that at d5render.com. So we'll quickly go to this export tab over here, click on export. Then we're going to increase or reduce this export smoothness. It actually determines the level of detailedness while in D5. So we are going to increase this smoothness to about, let's use 10. Then I'm just going to click on export. Now I'm going to locate the place I want to place our exported file. So I'm just going to go to where I want it to be. Okay, so now we've located where we want to keep it. We're just going to give it a name. So I'm just going to give it Centenary Tower. So I'm going to save it. Okay, so now we've exported our model. We'll actually open the file location to where we exported it and see how the thing exported. So as you can see, you see the Centenary Tower.d5a file, and it's actually 1.3 gig, which is very heavy because it's a high-rise building. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to kind of highlight the whole model. Then we're going to temporarily hide it by typing HH on our keyboard. Okay, so now we've done that, we're going to go to this hidden elements toggle, and we're just going to click on it to reveal the hidden elements. So we're just going, what I want to do next is I want to start on hiding all the individual fences of the project. So this is one of them. So I'm just going to right click and I'm going to unhide in view, unhide elements, and I'm going to check this hidden elements icon again. Then I'm going to make sure go to this view over here, this view tab. Then I'm going to click on this tab over here to actually drag the center point to the middle of the fence so it will export properly. Then I'm going to close this so this circle will not be there again. Then I'm just going to go to D5 render again, the tab. Then I'm going to click on export. Then I'm going to export this and rename it as F1. Then I'm going to repeat the same process for the other fence. Alright, so now we'll finish exporting all the fence. We're going to just right click, we're going to hide this last fence, then we're going to simply type HR on our keyboard for all the hidden elements, temporarily hidden elements, to actually reveal itself again. So now we're going to open D5 and we're going to minimize Revit. Okay, now we're in D5. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to this new tab over here, click on new, and we are going to open a brand new project. Okay, so now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to start importing our models. So we're going to go over here to this import tab over here, and we're going to click on import. Then we're going to locate our file location where we kept the project. Alright, so now we've located where we kept the models we exported. You are going to see them as this .d5a format. So we're just going to click on one of them and we're going to click on this open. So the project is actually heavy, so it will take some time. So if it takes time on your system, don't be too surprised depending on how heavy the project is. You could actually see a percentage growing here while the thing is importing. So once there's no more percentage showing, you could just click here and the project will start loading to appear in the D5 scenery. Okay, now the project has successfully been imported, so we're just going to place it. And we're going to import the other parts of the project. So we're going to import the remaining fences. So we're just going to, in the same fashion, click on the import tab, import the first fence. Then it will take some time, import the second fence too. I don't know why they're heavy, surprisingly, but we're going to move on regardless. Import the third fence, also import the fourth fence. Then I'm just going to start clicking and placing them one by one to the project. Then we're going to place this. This is how to bring in your project to D5 render. Let's just save the project by clicking Ctrl S and saving it. Then we're going to place the project exactly where we want to place it. Alright, so now we've located where we want to place it. We're just going to rename the file and give it the name we want. So I'm going to call it Centenary Tower. Then I'm going to save it. Let me just correct this and I'm going to save it. Alright, so now we've imported our model to D5 render. I'm just going to take you through some basic navigation tools. So you are going to go over to this tab over here to actually choose the options of navigation. Currently we're in orbit, and what orbit means is we have a focal point, and if we click on our right click, we'll just hover around that focal point and just hover around it. We can still zoom in, zoom out, hover around the focal point. Then we can also click on this option again and click on this fly. This fly actually gives us freedom to move in sort of a ghost-like manner, and we can just zoom in. We can hold shift on our keyboard to actually zoom in faster and retract. So now we are going to adjust the positions of these fences on our model. So we are going to click one of the fence. So once we click on an object in D5, a toggle will come up here, actually giving you the option to move the fence in whatever way you want. You can choose to rotate it on this axis. I'll press Ctrl Z, so I'll just click it again. You can choose to click on this box and place it in any 3D manner or any 3-dimensional plane. We can place it back here. Then we can click on this circle here to move it on several horizontal planes. Like I'm moving it on a horizontal plane here, I'm moving it on another horizontal plane here, I'm also moving it on another horizontal plane here by clicking on this. So I'm just going to click on this box here to place it back here. So I'm now going to place it appropriately. I could also go to the top view by hitting T to actually get an orthographic view of this model. Then I will just adjust the fences here in the same fashion. I'll click on this fence too. Let me just zoom closer, click on it. Then I'm going to hold this vertical plane to actually adjust it on this horizontal plane. I'm going to do the same for this fence and this gate. Then I'm going to do this here, and I'm going to do the same for this. Okay, so now we're in a pretty good position. I'm going to click on P to return back to my normal perspective view. So the next thing I'm going to show you guys is how to pick good shots in D5. So now to pick a good shot, this is a high-rise building, so I actually have to make some special considerations while picking this high-rise, because I want to get the whole high-rise, and it's kind of tricky to pick high-rise. Then I'm just going to navigate and get a good position where I can get a good perspective view. I think this is actually a good position. But as you can see, we cannot actually get the top of this high rise, and we want to get it. What are we going to do? We are just going to click F8 on our keyboard to activate the 2-point perspective settings. So I'm going to click F8 and it has activated. What this F8 does is that, or rather this 2-point perspective setting does is that wherever I navigate, I'm actually going to still maintain straight vertical lines on the side, enabling us to be able to get the overall view. Then I could also go to this tab here and reduce the speed of flight, so I can carefully adjust this view to set it in place very well. So I'm just going to place this view somewhere. I'm going to show some of the roads, which I think is important while picking views. Show some roads. And I'm just going to go over here and create new scene. And always remember, very important, to save your project after making some progress in D5 render. So we're going to save the project. That is all you need to know for now about picking shots in D5. Alright, so I think we're going to pick this final view and we're just going to add it. Okay, so while I was navigating this project, let me increase the movement speed. I actually noticed an issue. The issue is that I forgot to put some ceiling work in this place over here, this entrance. So I want to correct it on Revit. So what am I going to do? I'm going to go back to Revit and I'm going to adjust the corrections in Revit first. Alright, so now I've finished implementing the corrections. I'm going to go to this D5 export tab again and I'm going to export again. I'm going to put it to the same quality I set it at before. Then I'm going to click on export and I'm just going to click on the previously exported file and override it. And I'm going to click yes. Alright, so now we've exported it. We're going to go back to D5. So what we are simply going to do is we're just going to click on this model here, then go over to this icon over here and just click on this reload tab. Then we're just going to click on confirm. Then we're going to wait for it to reload. So as you can see now, the model has successfully updated, and our ceiling is actually set in place now. All right, so I'm going to enter into material placing. So firstly, I'm going to pick our materials for our walls. So I'm just going to go to assets over here, and I'm going to go and look for walls under this list here. So I'm just going to click on wall. I'm going to click on wall paint, and I'm going to wait for it to load because it requires internet. Then I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to look for this white wall paint, and I'm just going to place it. This white wall paint is like a default kind of paint in D5, so we could use it and start editing from there. So now I'm going to click escape. I'm going to click on this icon over here, or I could click escape and just type I on my keyboard to access it. Then I'm going to click on the material and I'm going to edit the color. I want to make this building towards brown, so I'm just going to try and edit the color till it's beige. So I'm just going to go to this color palette here and shift it towards brown a bit, and put it brown. Then I'm just going to push it a little bit. So now we have edited this material and it's actually looking kind of good. So I'm just going to click on this. I'm going to go to this tab over here, click duplicate and copy the material. Then I'm just going to paste it over here. So now I'm going to edit this material once again to actually make it different. Then I'm going to click on this base color over here. Then I'm going to edit the tone of the color on this panel here. Then I'm just going to drag this and make it dark blue. So as you can see, we have edited the color of this wall. So the next material I'm going to edit is the glass. To do this, I'm going to go to asset library. I'm going to go to glass. There are actually two ways, but let's just follow this way. Then I'm just going to click on this normal glass. So I'm just going to click it and place it. So now we have placed this normal glass. As usual, we're going to click I to edit it. Then I'm just going to select it and I'm going to edit the color scheme first. I'm first going to tint it towards dark gray first, so it won't be. Don't mind this color here. The color is actually appearing red because light entering the building is reflecting this red floor. So I'm going to increase the specular, that is the reflectivity, reduce the roughness to 0, make sure the transparency is at 1, which is all right. Then I'm going to edit the material of this metallic mullion. So I'm just going to click on I again, then select it. Then I'm going to change it and reduce the shade to gray. Then I'm going to reduce the metallic luster. I'm also going to go and scroll down and look for this round corner setting. What does this round corner setting does? It actually bevels the edges of the mullion, so it actually gives it a more realistic touch. We could also use it for the walls too, but we'll still do it in a short time now. Now we've beveled the edges, I'm going to make the mullion darker. I'm going to reduce the specularness, increase the roughness so it won't be too reflective. Then I'm just going to click copy and place it on this other mullion. So we have applied materials on these three parts. So now we are going to go to the flooring and we are going to apply materials on this flooring. So we're going to go to asset library. We're going to go to ceramic tile. Let's give it a bit of time. Then we're going to look at this jazz white tile and we're just going to click on it and load it. Now we're just going to right click on this and edit it and scroll down here on this triplanar settings and we could adjust the scale of the tiles. We could reduce it so the scale will reduce the value so the scale will actually increase. Oh, I actually thought this was a reflection, but I didn't know that this glass was actually reddish. So what am I going to do to solve this issue? I'm just going to click on this glass over here. I'm going to scroll up, look for this duplicate icon, click on it and duplicate this glazed material. Then place it here and problem solved. We're done with the glass. So now we want to apply material on this slab, this concrete slab. We're going to go to asset library once again. We're going to go to walls. Under walls, we're going to go to wall paint and we're going to look for some nice concrete material here. So let's just scroll down and look for something that will be appropriate for this concrete slab. Okay, I think this could actually serve. So I'm just going to click on this and I'm going to place it here as the concrete material. Then I'm going to close this and I'm just going to click on click on this, reduce the scale, reduce the value to increase the scale of the concrete slab, then on this triplanar setting, and it will give it a more realistic look. Okay, that is good for the building. Now we are going to edit some site features. First of all, we have this fountain here. We want to make this material water. So what am I going to do? I'm just going to simply click on I and to actually open this material editor. Click on this. Then I'm going to go to this tab over here. Click on this drop down icon. Then I'm going to look for water, flowing liquid, and I'm going to on it. So now I've on it, I could actually edit the properties of this water material. I'm going to go to this base color. I'm going to change it and make it lighter. I could increase the depth to actually darken the bottom or hide the bottom of the water, but I'm just going to increase it a bit, increase the flow velocity if I want it to be faster since it's a fountain. Go to this base color map, or rather just go to this normal icon over here. Then I could increase it to increase the acoustic waves of the water. So now we are going to apply asphalt material on this road. Now to do that, we could go to assets, go to outdoor ground, then go to asphalt and select an asphalt material. Then we could just use this default D5 asphalt material. I always like this one, it's actually good to use. Then I'm just going to click on it. Then I'm just going to edit it, and I'm going to reduce on this triplanar, reduce the value to increase the scale. The asphalt is actually too dark, so I'm going to go to this base color value and reduce it towards white, which has given us our asphalt. To add greenery is very simple. You are just going to click on this. We are going to go to this drop down icon once again, click on this drop down. Then we are going to go to grass and turn on the grass. This is actually heavy, so it will take some time, so be wary of that. Okay, so far I think we've done a very good work on the materials. I also want to show you guys how to apply materials on luminous materials you want to be luminous. What do I mean? For instance, we have this LED light over here and I want them to actually glow. What am I going to do about this? I'm going to click on the LED material with the material editor. Remember, it's just click I on your keyboard and you'll be able to access it. Then we're going to select this material editor. We're going to go under this icon, this tab here. Then we're going to see this emissive option. Then we're just going to check it. Now we have checked it, it will actually start glowing, but we can edit this glowingness. So we're going to increase the intensity to about 100. Then we're going to change this from colors. If you want colors, you could actually select any color you want. You could make it red, but we don't want that. We just want some good warm light. So how will I do it? Instead of looking for a warm color on the color wheel, we are just going to select temperature and we're going to increase the Kelvin and make it warm. Let's use 2005, and thus we have actually applied our luminous material. Okay, so I think we have covered a lot on materials. So the next thing I'm going to be showing you guys is how to create or build up your composition, environmental composition in D5 Render. Okay, just to add some things on the material, we could also load in materials from outside D5. To do that, we'll just click on I or just select this tab here to open the material editor. Then we're just going to go to this base color map. Then we're going to go to this box here and click on it. Then we're just going to access our file explorer and just going to bring in the material I want to bring in. So as you can see, I've imported a material from outside D5. Then I could just add it to my local library by simply clicking on add to local, and it will be saved in my local library for later use. Okay, I'm also going to show you how to place interlocking stones or interlocking tiles on your model. So I'm just going to go to assets, I'm going to go to online, then I'm going to go to floor tiles. Under these floor tiles, I'll see an array of interlock tiles. So I'm just going to select from one of them. Okay, let me just start with this one and just click on it and just going to place it here. So as you can see, this stone is actually some now styles. Then I could just click on I again to edit it, select it, edit the size or rescale it. I could actually select just uncheck this stretch, so I could actually edit one scale. I could make it longer, I could reduce the y-axis and make it slimmer depending, but I just want it to be uniform, so I'll just undo it, Ctrl+Z, and I'm just going to select it and scale them together and just scale it to the appropriate. I could also edit other things like the roughness, the reflection. I could reduce the reflection and all. I think that is all we'll need to know about materials for now. Okay, so now we are done with the material application. We are going to delve into the composition of this project. To start with the composition, we are going to start with the background vegetation. So how are we going to start with this? We are going to plant and put hedges on the rims of our green area. So to do that, we are just going to go to this part. Under this part, or not part, we are going to go to these tools and we are going to click on part under tools. Then under this part, it will give us the option to place a certain greenery of our choice on a straight line or a more complex line. So we're just going to select this edge and we're going to draw our path. So we could actually go to the top view by clicking T to get an orthographic view and start drawing our path for our greenery. So always know that it's always good to look at this tab over here and look at the models that are actually highlighted here. So we don't want these two of them to be put in this part. We're just going to click on this minus and remove the one we don't want. Then we're going to start drawing our path. We could just draw this and just bevel it along the curved areas. And we're just going to do it at one or two places. And we could also do it again. Just click on these tools, click on path, then do it again by just doing it on the rims of these green areas. Okay, so now we've created these two parts. We could go back and click P to return back to our perspective view. So to edit this part, we'll just simply select it. And once we select it, this toggle will come up here. Under this toggle, we could actually edit the number of trees or number of models you want to be in the part. So if I increase it, it will form a smooth edge round like this, which looks good. So we're also going to do the same for this hedge over here and just increase it. Now the next aspect of vegetation we're going to work on is actually the background vegetation, which is the peripheral of the site, which will be placed at the peripheral of the site. For this, I usually use coniferous plants. So I'm going to go to our asset library, then I'm going to look for good conifers. Then I'm just going to select this. Okay, so since I don't want to be placing them manually, I could simply go to these tools again, click on this part tool, and I could just deselect this one, click on this minus to remove this from the part, and just look for a good coniferous plant. Always note, while selecting greenery in D5, you should also look out for if it has this box sign attached to it. What this box sign means is if I'm animating it, it will actually animate, and like if I on the wind setting, it will actually be able to move around like a real life tree. But if I load in this, for instance, this model here, it will not actually be able to act in that manner. So it's always good you take note of that. So I'm going to use this one that can animate and just select it. So now I'm just going to go to T again, go to top view, and I'm going to draw a path where I want it to go. I'm going to draw another path for this conifer. Then I'm going to click on P. Okay, so now we've drawn our path. Of course, there are some few conifers here, escape, and I'm just going to select it. So in selecting it, I'm going to increase the numbers. Let's just say 22. I think, okay, my system is beginning to slow down. It's getting a bit heavy. So I think 22 is okay, but my issue with this is all the trees are the same size, and in nature, there is no perfection in nature. So what am I going to do about them? I'm going to go over to this icon here, and I'm going to go to this random size, and just increase it here. So it will actually randomize the sizes of these coniferous plants over here. Okay, so the next aspect of composition we're going to enter is, okay, before I start placing background buildings, I want to place palm trees, which are very important. But before placing palm trees, it's always good to refer back to your view where you are looking at, and always use it as a guide while creating your composition, so you will not place objects that are not really necessary to the view, because while rendering 3D views, it's always good to optimize the performance of the system by placing objects and models when they are actually needed, not randomly. So we are going to revert back to this view, and we're going to place some palm trees to support the composition of this view. So I think we're just going to go to assets, we're going to go to palm. Okay, let's wait for it to load a bit. Then, well, remember what I told you about this sign attached to some model. So we're going to use it as a criteria while picking this. So before we pick this, we're actually going to edit this parameter. This parameter affects the properties of the model. So we're just going to reduce the size, reduce the density. Okay, this density doesn't really matter. Just check this and just select this, uncheck this and uncheck it first. Then we're going to increase this random size. Then we're just going to click this and be placing. What this does is that the properties here actually affect the library model. So we're just going to place some palms along this. Okay, it's too much. We're going to reduce this random size, so it will not randomize the size. The size won't vary that much. So we're just going to place this. Okay, I think this is okay. Place some palm trees here. and we're going to revert back to this view. So we're going to go back to the view we are working with, and we're going to look at what we've created. Okay, so far these palms are placed anyhow, so we're just going to adjust this. We're going to select the palm. We're going to move this palm over here to serve as a background. It's still too much and it's still dragging too much attention. I'm going to shift it back and just go back to this view and look at how it's located. As you can see, I'm just looking at the view. I'm making sure nothing is out of proportion. So I'm going to drag this palm closer. I don't want it to obstruct the building. All these bigger palms, I could reduce the size of this palm. Let me change these digits to 3 meters. Then I'm just going to make sure it's not too much and it's not dragging attention with the view too much. And I'm going to place this. So now I'm going to place the background buildings. So to place the background buildings, I'm going to click on P to exit this 2-point perspective restricted setting. Then I'm going to go to an asset library. But unfortunately, I don't want to use D5 buildings. Or actually, on the contrary, I'm actually going to use them because this is a high-rise project and I need big buildings. So I'm just going to go on this D5 library, scroll and look for buildings. Okay, so now we have seen the buildings. So I'm just going to go to commercial buildings and check if D5 has some nice commercial buildings I could use. I'm using the free version, so okay. So let's just go to buildings overall and look out for other buildings. So I think I like this one, so let's just use this one. I'm going to place this one over here. It's always good while placing background buildings. You should also always note that the background building should not be struggling for attention with the actual building, because the actual building is the priority. So this background building should be what they are, background buildings. So I'm just going to move this back and place this here. Then I'm also going to do another background building for this region. So I'm going to click on P and I'm going to do the same. I'm going to place some. Go to assets, go to the asset library, place this apartment building. If you notice, I'm trying not to pick tall buildings because I don't want it to kind of confuse the viewers of this project. So before they think that this background building is actually the main building, like this is dragging too much attention. So I'm going to go to P and try and push it way back as much as possible. Not for it not to drag attention with the actual building. So I'm going to go back to this view. As you can see, this building is actually, as I can reduce the depth, is actually distant as possible. So I could place more buildings so it would just build up a more complete environment. And I could just go to assets again, place another kind of building, and just place this one even further down and just go back to this view. Okay, as you can see, we're actually creating something very nice. So now the next aspect of composition I'm going to place entourage, people moving around, a vehicle, street lights and other things. So I'm just going to look for a vehicle. I usually use D5 vehicle sometimes, but for the sake of perfection, I'm just going to use some local vehicles I have. You could actually load in 3ds Max vehicles to D5 and it could actually be helpful. So I'm going to go to local, I'm going to go to model, and if this video reaches 5,000 views, I'm going to give some of my D5 custom 3ds Max cars I use for D5 render. So that will be the goal in mind for this video. So I'm just going to place this Audi car and I'm just going to go back to this view and look at how it looks. So of course I don't want the car to be dragging too much attention, so I'm just going to place it at a good distance. Let's say somewhere here, and I think this is good. Then we're going to place some other things like human beings. Let's go to assets. We're going to go back to online. We're going to go and look for characters. I think it's under characters. Then once you click characters, I could now wait for it to load. Of course, if you've paid for the pro version of D5, you could get more entourage, but let's just use the free ones I'm using for now. And let me just place this guy over here. Place him here, and we're going to place maybe this person here and place this here, which I think is all right. Now I'm going to go back to this view, and as you can see, we are building up our environment. So let me just place some traffic lights. I'm just going to go to all and I'm going to look for some, or I could just type traffic lights in the search, traffic, and click on enter. Then we'll wait for some time for D5 to actually bring out the traffic light. So we have our traffic light here. I'm just going to place it here. Then I'm going to rotate it. Remember, I know by traffic laws, a traffic light shouldn't be placed here, but it's just to give it the kind of 3D vibe or just create composition. It doesn't need to be too realistic all the time, but of course, I could be wrong, so you could put it down in the comment section below. Okay, so this is just a sample. I'm just playing with elements to create this composition here. I'm just going to move this palm here. I'm going to add the deciduous plant here. Let me just add the deciduous tree here just for some extra ornamental touch. So I'm just going to go to broadleaf and add some deciduous. Now I'm just going to make sure. It's always good, always take note of this. If you put in a search text for D5 to search, always know that if you are opening another section of the library, you just make sure you click on this X to exit it and just click on broadleafs. So it will not actually use the search text as a parameter. So now I'm just going to place this deciduous tree here. I don't want it to be too big, so to take some time to load, then I'm going to place it here. Now I could just click on it and reduce the size. Let's reduce this digits to 10,000, and I think the size is more reasonable. Then I'm going to go back to this view, and it's too much. I'm going to reduce it to 3,000. Then I'm just going to place it on this side so it will not be dragging too much attention. Okay. Alright, so while we're making progress, it's always good to keep in mind that to optimize your D5 project very well, you could actually hide things in view. What do I mean by this? For instance, we have this fence obstructing our view. So we'll just click on this fence and it will be highlighted in the object tab over here. So what are we going to do next? We're going to go to this eye icon and just click on it and it will disappear. Then we're just going to go and update it over here. Make sure you update it, it's very important. We could do the same for this coniferous plant. Then we're just going to go here, hide it in view, go back, update it, do the same for this, hide in view, update it, and we'll actually have a view that these elements, the objects are hidden, but if you go to another view, it will actually return back. So it kind of gives this illusion that the objects, you can give your 3D illusion, so you can hide objects in view just the way you can hide it in Revit. So it actually allows for a lot of versatility in your rendering environment. Alright, now, so I'm going to talk about placing curtains in D5 Render. D5 actually has its own custom curtains where you can find in the material library. You could just go to online model, you could just search for curtains. And you are going to see D5 curtains. Okay, let me just remove the S and search for curtains. Let's see if we'll find it. So as you can see, D5 have their own custom curtains, which they have and which are actually very good. But I don't like D5 curtain. I don't like it because it's difficult to edit the opacity. So light doesn't pass through it very well. So instead of using D5 default curtain, I have my own personal curtain that I used to use for renders. So I'm just going to try and locate it on my local library. Alright, so now I've placed my translucent default Revit curtain. I'm just going to place it. So what I do for curtains is I arrange all the curtains in a single floor because we are working with a high rise, so we want to be as fast as possible. So I'm going to arrange all the curtains in a single floor. I could just select two of these, select both of them, and be copying them at repeated intervals because I have a kind of sawtooth building. I'm going to be doing the same. Alright, so now we've finished placing all the curtains. We're just going to go to our object tab and we're going to select all the curtains from there because if we start navigating through the project, it will be much more difficult. So I'm just going to hold the Control key and start selecting multiple curtains. select all the curtains you just placed. And it's always good to do this at the starting point so you easily be able to track all the curtains in the project. Then I'm just going to right click and we're going to group them. So this will now make it easy for us to copy the curtains at repeated intervals. So I'm just going to go to an elevation view with R or F. I'm just going to go to use F key on my keyboard. Then I'm just going to go and go to this elevation view and view it properly. So now, due to the fact that my building is repeated at crossing intervals, I'm just going to be copying these curtains at 2 floors each. And I'm going to be copying these curtains easily at repeated interval. So as you can see, this is just a strategy I use to make things faster, especially when I'm creating composition for a massive building like this, a high rise. So it's also very important you take note of that. I'm also going to do this here as well. Do this here. And I'm just going to repeat it for the other type of floor and just copy it all the way up. And that is it. We'll just click B to go back to this, and you'll see that if you hold shift and navigate, you see that the curtains are placed appropriately. Alright, so I'm going to be talking about lighting now. So the first thing to do while lighting a project in D5 is to go to this under this layer tab here and create a new layer for the lighting. So I'm just going to click on this plus icon and a new layer is going to be created. Then we're just going to right click and rename the layer. We're going to name it 01 lighting. Alright, so now we are going to start placing some interior lights to actually pop out through these openings or fenestrations. So how does light work in D5? D5 light works with simple reflection. For instance, I'm just going to go over to this tab and I'm going to add a light, and I'm going to add a point light. So I'm going to place this point light here. So now I've placed it here, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this layer and place it under lighting layer. Okay, it's already placed under lighting layer. So now it's placed under lighting layer, I'm going to adjust its parameters. First of all, I'm going to increase the intensity. Let me increase the intensity to about 100. Then I'm going to increase this attenuation radius, and I'm going to make the light as warm as possible. So I'm going to make it warm enough. So what happens is that if you are placing light in D5, you are actually going to place it on a parallel or perpendicular wall to the opening. I just spoke some mathematics grammar. What it just simply means is now this light, as for instance, this light is placed on this wall. It's actually reflecting on the surface of this wall and coming out through this window. If I copy it, you are going to see how the light will simultaneously increase and its efficiency will increase more. So we're just going to do this for the ground floor spaces, these lower floor spaces, and just illuminate the interiors of these interior spaces. Okay, so now we are going to go to the typical floor and we're going to place the lights in each of these typical floors and we're going to copy it. So I'm just going to hold shift on my keyboard, select any of this and just drag it out. So now I'm just going to place this light on this surface. So I'm going to slowly navigate through and get into the space and place it. Remember what I said earlier about the reflection principle about lumion lighting. So with that same principle, I'm going to place this light strategically so it will actually come emit from the externals of these spaces. So I'm just going to copy this. I'm going for accuracy's sake, I'm just going to delete this light I placed here before because I want to actually perform something. So let me delete these ones. Okay, let me just delete this last one. Then I'm just going to go and copy these lights inside this interior space to make sure that the windows are well illuminated or lights are passing through the windows. So I'm going to do the same for this space, or I could just go to top view, T, and I should just go to this display panel, then change this to wireframe. So this wireframe will kind of allow me see it in a wireframe, as I said, but it's too heavy due to the weight of the project. So I'm just going to go back to precise to the normal, and I'm going to go back to P and continue placing them manually. Unfortunately, the file is too heavy, so placing it manually is actually difficult for me. So I'm just going to place it the regular way. So I'm just going to copy this light here. I'm just going to place them on close to the surface of the walls. So the light will actually bounce off the wall and reflect and shoot outside the window. So it's just some simple stuff. So if you are wondering why I created the lighting layer is simple. when I want to render daylight views, I could easily turn off the lighting layer, so all the lights will simultaneously hide, so it will give the daylight feeling a full daylight view without the need of manually hiding all the lights yourself, or even at worst deleting them. Alright, so now I've copied all these lights and I've placed them strategically. What am I going to do next? I'm going to go in the same principle I used for the curtains. I'm going to go to this object tab, then I'm just going to select all the lights, all the point lights, and I'm going to group them. I'm going to hold Control on my keyboard, select them, each of them, and just right click and just group them. I'm going to name them as I'm going to rename it as lighting 101. So now I've created this layer, I could easily go and click on F to actually get an elevation view. Just click on this, hide it so it will not obstruct us. Then simply copy it, hold Shift and copy it. So that is just how to create lighting you use to place for multi-levels. So now I'm going to talk about how to create the environmental light. So for the environmental light, I usually use two types of light. I use bollard light and street light. So I'm just going to show you how I use bollard light. So I'm going to go to my asset library. I'm going to go to my local asset library. D5 has their own bollard light as well, but me, I preferably use my own. So I'm just going to bring in this bollard light. Alright, so we've currently loaded in the bollard light I wanted to load in. So what I'm going to do now is this bollard light is currently in the default layer. So I'm just going to bring in a light, and I'm going to bring in a point light, and I'm going to place it here. So after I place it here, I'm going to select this point light and I'm going to change the layer to this our lighting layer. Forget the name, it's just a mistake. Then I'm going to edit the parameters of this said light, and I'm going to increase the intensity to, let's use 65. Of course, I'm going to increase the attenuation radius a bit, and I'm going to increase the temperature. Then I'm going to navigate to a kind of top view. Then I'm going to try and use my visual prowess to place the light at the center of the bollard. So now these two are together. I'm just going to select the bollard light, and select the light. Okay, the thing is not yet quite there yet, so I'm just going to try and adjust it a bit. Let's see. I'm going to try and adjust it to the center point. Then I'm going to select the bollard now, select the light, go over to this properties panel here, or rather this object tab. Then I'm going to right click and I'm going to group them, and I can name this now bollard light. Let me rename it as bollard main. Okay, so now I have this, I can actually just go to this top view by clicking T and copy it around at intervals to actually help illuminate my environment, so giving us some more light. So the next type of light I said I'm going to create is the street lights. So the street light is mainly for the street views, to actually give a realistic feel to these street renders, because without street light it kind of looks weird and everywhere will be dark. So I'm just going to load in another of my library, and I'm just going to load in this street light. As usual, I'm just going to select this one. I've already grouped it before, but I could just edit the group and adjust some things to actually fit into the context of this project. So as usual, we can see the group here. The first thing, I'm going to right click and I'm going to rename it as street light, so it will be easy for me to reference in future if I want to make updates or whatever I want to do. So I'm just going to click on this drop down here, so I'll be able to access the contents of the group. Then I'm going to select this spotlight. I'm going to go over here, change it to temperature, make it warmer. I'm going to also change the layer to lighting layer, and I'm going to do the same for this. I'm going to go to temperature, make it warmer, and change the layer to lighting layer. Let me change the default from default. Okay, not here. Go to default layer and change it to lighting layer. Now I'm going to show you what this lighting layer can do now. So as you can see, if I go back to this view, okay, this view, as you can see, and I just, let's say I just go to this environment setting and I just change it to night. Now, as you can see, everywhere is dark, but the lighting fixtures I used here are actually glowing. If I go to these layers and I just off this, as you can see, those lights have automatically disappeared, including these two here. They have automatically disappeared. So what is glowing now is just the LED lights I use here. If not, everywhere will be dark. That is the essence of creating these layers and why it helps. So I'm just going to turn it on back, and I'm going to go back to this view. And this is what you need to know about lighting in D5 render, and how to use light and make your render very comprehensive. All right, so now we've completely set our composition, we've applied materials, and we've set everything. So we're now going to start working on the render settings and the environmental setting. So as you can see, I'm going to go to this environmental tab. Then I'm going to change this from GeoSky to HDRI. So now I've placed it in HDRI. I'm going to select the HDRI we're going to use. So originally I like using this early morning, but I'm just going to change it to some custom HDRI I usually use for morning views. So I'm going to just click on it and load it in. Okay, of course you can always go to the internet and look for other HDRIs that might be suitable for your own renders. So for this video I'll be using this one. So I'm just going to modify this setting. But firstly, before I even start working on anything, it's always good if you're working on settings in D5, you're going to go under this effect and turn off this auto exposure. This auto exposure just makes everything bright no matter the setting you put, so you can't really control your lighting. So now I'm going to drop this to -14. Then I'm going to go to this environmental effect, drop this to 0, this background to 0.27, and drop this skylight to 0.36. Now I'm going to go to this sun color temperature, reduce it towards the cooler side. Then I'm going to adjust this rotation to actually get one side bright and one side dimmer. So let's see how it goes. Then I'm going to go under effects, and I'm going to, of course, increase the tint, reduce the warmth of the image, then reduce it towards the cooler side. I'm just going to impute 6000. Now I'm going to go to contrast, and I'm going to increase the contrast to 0.0, let's say 0.6. The highlight, I'm going to reduce the highlight just a bit. The shadow is all right, the slope is all right. I'm going to increase the tint to 0.09 or 0.08. Then I'm going to increase the bloom to 0.39. I'm also going to add a bit of lens flare, a bit of vignette, and increase the saturation to 0.5. Then I'm going to go to this view toggle over here, and I'm going to update this scene. So as you can see, these light sources are actually obstructing our view. So to actually make them invisible, I'm just going to type L on my keyboard. So as you can see, this is the render setting. But my problem with this render setting now is I actually am not seeing the effect of some of this my artificial light. So I'm just going to adjust some light a bit. I'm going to just click B to exit the 2-point perspective setting. Then I'm just going to drag this light source. I'm going to leave this here and maybe drag this light source here. Drag one here. I'm also going to do the same at this point just beside this. I'm going to place another one here just to help increase the lighting in the environment. So now I think we're good to render. So finally, to render in D5, we're just going to go to this render icon over here. Then we're going to edit some parameters of this image. You could actually have a preset size. You could set it at 4K, you could set it at 6K, you could set it at 8K, whatever you want. Although the higher you set it, the more time it will take. But we're going to go back to original. So now I've gone back to the original. I'm just going to impute my own size. Let me just say 3.5 instead of 4K. So it will actually increase. Then I'm just going to click on render. Then I'm going to place it in the file location where I want to place it. Alright, so now we've located where we want to place it. We can just give the render a name. Let's name it Centenary. I normally used to add numerics to my rendering name, so I could easily make it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So let me just adjust this name a bit. Centenary. Okay, now I'm just going to click save. Then depending on the system quality and the complexity of the image, it might actually take more time. So we're just going to wait for it a bit and to see our render results. Alright, so our render is complete now, and we're just going to open it and see what it has yielded. So as you can see, this is actually this very nice render. You can see all the way since we started how we've gotten here. So now I want to create a daylight setting for this same. Alright, so to create a daylight scenery for this view now, firstly we're just going to type L on our keyboard to actually hide this light showing on the screen now. We're just going to type L and it's going to hide. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go under these layers and we're going to off this layer, this lighting layer. Then we're just going to click on this add new scene to actually create an entirely new scene for this daylight view now. So now these are daylight scenery now. So nextly, we are going to we are going to hold P to actually exit this 2-point perspective setting. Then I'm just going to go and off all our luminous materials, so this LED light won't be on during the daytime. So we're just going to select it. We're going to go to emissive and we're going to turn it off. We're also going to go over here and off the light in this chandelier. We could actually leave these light bulbs because they are still okay even in the daylight. Sometimes you need a bit of artificial light in the daylight, but not too much, something very subtle. So we're just going to go back to this view and we're going to click update. So now in this daylight scene, we're going to go under environment and we're going to be using for custom HDRIs. So I'm going to go over here, I'm going to go to default, and is this default you see normally on if you are using a system without any external HDRI. Then I'm just going to select this partly sunny HDRI. Then I'm going to click this up. So now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go under this sun and I'm going to just check this. Then I'm going to reduce the intensity of this sunlight. Now I'm going to go back to effect and I'm going to reduce this bloom effect to about 0.16. Then I'm just going to rotate our view. Then I'm also going to go back to effect and I'm going to reduce this lens flare so it will not be obstructing us or interfering with our render. Then I'm just going to adjust the sun of this render. So in daylight render, it's always important that you kind of play a lot with the shadows. And to do that, let's just update and save this setting we have done so far. We are going to go click P. So we are going to get an overview of our project, and we're going to add more trees to actually be able to cast more interesting shadows and play with shadows. So I'm just going to select this tree and I'm going to, let me select this other one. Then I'm just going to copy it. I'm going to copy this one here. I'm also going to select this one and just copy it. So I'm going to let me select this tall one and just copy it here. So I'm going to select a lot of trees in this background just to be able to play with some shadows on the ground. So I'm going to go back to this view and I'm going to continue rotating. I'm going to start rotating. And let's see how far this can go. I don't want the light to be too much on the building, so let me just rotate to about this point. Okay, so I think this is decent, but my problem with this HDRI is I'm feeling the sky and the clouds are too overpowering. So I'm afraid I'll need to change this HDRI. So I'm going to use one of my custom HDRIs. Like I said, if this video reaches 5k views, I'm going to actually drop some of my components for free on D5 Render, so it will make rendering for you very easy. So I'm just going to use this HDRI, this particular one. Then I'm just going to click up. So now I'm going to increase this background because the background is too blue and I don't want it to be too blue. I'm going to reduce this skylight. I'm going to go to effect and I'm going to reduce this highlights. So I don't want the highlight to be too much. I'm going to go back to environment and I'm going to start rotating till I get a nice shadow and light effect. Let's see, somewhere here. Okay, let's see somewhere here. So I think this is good, but I need to do some things. And let me just save this scene. I'm just going to go P. So let me exit this. So I'm just going to move some of these trees to actually get some shadows around aside from this one. So I'm just going to move this here and I'm going to go back to this view. Okay, so as you can see, this view is actually looking very good and it's a good daytime view, but let's just touch one or two settings before we finalize. So I'm going to go back to this effect and I'm going to increase the temperature. After increasing the temperature, I'm going to go back to highlight, reduce it a bit. The contrast is okay. I'm going to increase the exposure just a bit, just a little touch. Okay, I'm going to reduce it back. I think this is okay. Then I'm going to, as usual, click on render. Click on this render icon here, save it as an option B, and just render it. So we're just going to wait a bit for the render to be ready. All right, so the render is ready now. So we're just going to open it. So we're going to start from the evening ambient render, and we're going to go to the direct render. Alright, so if this video was helpful, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to our channel for more content like this. Also hit the notification bell to get notified once we release new videos. More tutorial courses like this will be coming out, so stay tuned and stay safe till then. Have a nice day. Thank you.